So today we're going to be talking about a very specialized outcome measure called goal attainment scaling. And I'm a firm believer that this is like just one of the most perfect ways of measuring outcomes for therapeutic recreation when we have really specific client needs, and we also want to be able to individualize what we're measuring based on our individual clients. So goal attainment scaling is an individualized criterion reference measure of change. And what I mean by criterion is instead of measuring change in individuals based on norms, in other words, how does someone, like for instance, the mini mental state exam, when you do that exam on someone and you get their score is basically interpreted based on how that person scores relative to or in comparison to a norm of group, everyone else who may take this score, and so you then indicate the outcomes of it based on how that person compares to average, if you will, an average individual. Whereas a criterion reference measure, where you're looking specifically at a criteria for an individual, so it's much more individualized, and it also can be, quite frankly, much more specific. So goal attainment scaling also defines a set of unique goals for a client and then specifies the range of outcomes that reflect concrete activities for that specific individual for that specific activity. Goal attainment scale is always measured on this 5-point scale, where +2 is measured as much more than expected in their outcome. +1 is more than expected in their level of outcome. 0 is expected, so that's what we would consider their baseline, if you will. -1 is less than expected level of outcome, and -2 is much less expected level. So some of the benefits then of goal attainment scaling, I've already referred to the one, is that it's criterion referenced rather than norm referenced, which makes it really responsive to minimally clinically significant changes. So you're able to really get into the kind of like very small changes, if you will, and that's so important, especially if you're working with people like with dementia, where we know they're going to decline over time as a progression of the disease. So what can we really target for in seeing improvements in outcomes as a result of our interventions? It's also used for measuring individual goals, so we can individualize this to each client. So, and again, they're going to co-create that with us. And we can, again, also use it for evaluating functional goals. And I've already said this, it can be individualized to all levels of functional ability as opposed to a norm-referenced assumption of functional ability. It also promotes cooperative goal setting. When we talk about goal setting, I just cannot emphasize enough, and we're going to get into that when we look at care plans and care plan goals, how important it is, if at all possible, to include the client in the setting of their own goal. And goal attainment scale embeds that right into the process of creating the scale, where the client is actively involved in determining what is a -2 versus a +2 and everything in between. And then finally, it reflects a real client-centered perspective to service delivery, and that's exactly what therapeutic recreation is too. It's a client-centered perspective, which is one of the reasons why it's such a, I think, an outstanding tool for every recreation therapist to get skilled at developing and using for the clients that we work with. I have added a link on Moodle that gives you an outstanding resource on goal attainment scaling. I strongly encourage you to go in and read it in detail. It's one of the best resources I've been able to find online. It has worksheets on it for you to be able to practice writing goal attainment scaling. It also details the history of it, the reliability and validity of it, the use of goal attainment scale, and also gives you the detail on how to actually create a goal attainment scale for clients that you're going to be working with. It isn't specific to TR, but I don't think it needs to be. You'll see how it is, which population it's specific to, and hopefully can also then see how it can be applied to any population that any recreation therapist is working in. I hope that you all enjoy the activity and the assignment in creating goal attainment scales, and that by the time you complete this course, that this is something that you feel both confident and competence in using in your future career.